Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I still shudder when I think back to that unsettling experience last month. It all began so harmlessly, just another Tinder match with a guy named Asnaf. His photo seemed innocuous enough, and we had a pleasant introductory chat via the app. After a few days of messaging back and forth, he asked if I'd be interested in meeting up for a date. I tentatively agreed, thinking it might be nice to finally meet someone from Tinder in person. We made plans for that Friday evening. He said he could pick me up at my place and take me to dinner at a cool new restaurant that had just opened downtown. I was looking forward to a fun night out, so I gave him my address and started getting ready, fixing my hair and makeup and picking out a cute outfit. The appointed time arrived, but there was no sign of Esnaf. I checked my phone, expecting a text saying he was running late or stuck in traffic, but there were no messages at all. I waited around for 30 more minutes and tried sending him a few texts, asking if we were still on for tonight. They all went unanswered. Feeling perplexed and dejected, I checked Tinder only to see that Esnap had totally unmatched and disappeared. I guessed he'd gotten cold feet and decided to stand me up instead of just being direct and canceling properly. It was disappointing, but I tried not to take it too personally. These things happen with online dating. Over the next week, though, Esnap's behavior got even shadier. I tried messaging him on other platforms to at least get some closure, but it turned out he had completely blocked me everywhere. This guy had totally ghosted me without explanation after I had given him my address. Maybe he was secretly married or had some other issues, but it seemed odd you would go to such extremes just to avoid an awkward conversation. I vented about it to my friends, who reassured me that I had dodged a bullet. Still, the whole thing left me feeling confused. About a week later, things took an even more unsettling turn. I started noticing a strange car parked across the street from my house. At first, I figured the driver was visiting someone nearby or just pulling over to check directions. But over the next several days, the same vehicle kept reappearing and lingering for hours at a time. I could never get a very clear look at the driver, but could tell he was male with dark hair and a beard. He would sit there motionless, not even appearing to look at his phone or do anything. Having an unfamiliar man stake out my house day after day gave me the chills. I started taking different routes home and leaving at odd hours, but it didn't deter him. Wherever I went in my neighborhood, he always seemed to turn up within a few minutes. I informed my landlord and we installed extra locks on all entry points, but I still felt vulnerable knowing I was being tracked so closely. The police couldn't do much since he hadn't overtly threatened me, but this man's bizarre behavior had me on edge. I had trouble sleeping at night as my mind raced with frightening possibilities. Was this some unstable stranger fixating on me for unknown reasons? Or could it possibly have something to do with Asnaf from Tinder? The dating app encounter seemed like too much of a coincidence given the timing. Asnaf had abruptly cut off contact after I gave him my address. Maybe he was tied to this stalker and now monitoring my movements. None of it made any logical sense, yet my gut told me the two incidents had to be connected. After 2 weeks of this escalating harassment, I was a nervous wreck. I could no longer write it off as innocent confusion. This man clearly had ill intent. The constant feeling of being watched and followed robbed me of any sense of security. I realized I needed to take bold action before things progressed to an even more dangerous level. That's when I devised a risky plan to catch the stalker off guard. I pretended to leave for work one morning just like normal, but instead of driving to the office, I parked a few blocks away and stealthily looped back on foot to my own street. I hid behind some dense bushes in a neighbor's yard and lay in wait. Right on cue, about 10 minutes later, that now sickeningly familiar car cruised up and claimed its standard lookout spot across from my house. Peering through branches, I watched the driver get out and make his way toward my front door. I felt my blood boil looking at this creep who had been terrorizing me for weeks. Summoning my courage, I lurched from my hiding place and confronted the man head-on. He seemed startled at first, but then became almost eerily calm when I started hurling accusations about stalking me. That flat effect as I unloaded on him gave me chills. Something about this man felt truly disturbed and dangerous beneath the surface. Spooked by the whole interaction, I quickly snapped some photos of him and his license plate, vowing to take it all to the police. He retreated to his car without another word and sped off. His silence somehow unnerved me even more than if he had tried to argue or threaten me. This person seemed capable of anything. But strangely, I never saw any sign of him again after that unnerving face-to-face encounter. He had been so persistent up to that point, then vanished as mysteriously as he had arrived. I spent the next few weeks constantly glancing over my shoulder, braced for his inevitable return. But the mysterious stalker never came back. In the end, I will never know if that unsettling harassment really did have some connection to ASNAP and Tinder. Maybe it was just a disturbing coincidence. Regardless, I am far more cautious and wary now when it comes to online dating. You truly never know who might be on the other end, or what intentions they harbor. I'm just grateful I trusted my instincts enough to take a stand before that situation escalated any further. It was a frightening ordeal, but at least now I feel empowered instead of continuously looking back in fear. I still can't believe I let this happen. I'm usually so much more careful, but I guess I let my guard down and paid the price. It started off innocently enough, just a Tinder match with a woman named Anna. Or at least, that's what she told me her name was. Who knows if it was even real? We had a pleasant enough chat over the app and she seemed normal, so when she suggested meeting up for drinks I said yes. We agreed to go to this trendy new bar downtown that night. I arrived first and texted her that I had grabbed a table. A few minutes later, a pretty brunette who matched her photos walked in. I assumed it must be Anna. She greeted me with a friendly hug when I walked in, as if we were already old pals. We settled into a cozy booth and I was struck by how at ease I immediately felt in Anna's presence. She had such a warm, inviting energy about her. The conversation flowed so smoothly, touching on travels, pop culture, and other typical first date topics. I found myself opening up more than usual about my job, family, and interests. Anna was a great listener, asking thoughtful follow-up questions and making witty remarks that kept me laughing. After about 30 minutes of easy back and forth, the bartender stopped by to see if we wanted another round. Before I could even respond, Anna jumped in saying she thought she recognized our bartender from someplace, though she couldn't put her finger on where. She jokingly asked if an old friend could get a couple drinks on the house tonight. The bartender squinted at her for a minute, then broke into a smile. "I knew you looked familiar," he exclaimed, though it seemed forced. "Let me hook you guys up real nice." He swiftly produced 2 shots of tequila along with a gin and tonic for me and a vodka cranberry for Anna. We cheersed and both took our shots, then chased them with long sips of our cocktails. Anna was delighted, remarking how she loved little perks like free drinks from old pals. I admit I was also pretty thrilled at the VIP treatment. It all seemed innocent at the time. As the night wore on, I gradually began feeling dizzy and disoriented. The bar wall seemed to tilt and sway around me. I had trouble focusing on Anna's face across the table, which kept blurring in and out. When I tried to stand up at one point to go to the restroom, I nearly toppled over before catching myself on the table. The last thing I remember clearly was Anna leaning toward me to talk over the music, her voice echoing strangely like we were underwater. After that, everything faded to black as whatever drug she'd slipped me fully kicked in. I have only hazy recollections of Anna tugging me toward the exit, the night air hitting my face, and streetlights whirling overhead before I lost consciousness completely. The next thing I knew, I was startling awake under harsh fluorescent lights. I looked around, confused about where I was. It took me a minute to realize I was in a hospital room, hooked up to a bag. A nurse explained I had been found unconscious outside the bar and brought in by ambulance. As I became more coherent, I had a sinking realization that my wallet, phone, and car keys were all missing from my pockets. The nurse said no personal effects had been brought in with me. I started to panic, wondering what had happened to my stuff. That's when it dawned on me. Anna must have slipped something in those free drinks at the bar to knock me out and rob me. She had seemed so sweet and normal. I never would have suspected she had ill intentions. But it all made terrible sense. The doctor said I had clearly been incapacitated chemically, but all the tests had come back clean for common date rape drugs. Whatever Anna gave me was sophisticated and left no trace. I still felt disturbingly violated. As soon as I was discharged from the hospital, I tried contacting Anna, but she had, of course, unmatched me on Tinder already. I had no way to reach her or track her down. I went to the police and explained the whole terrible ordeal, but they said there wasn't much to go on. They contacted the bar and checked their security footage, but oddly enough, there was no sign of Anna or me there that night. The tapes must have been tampered with or erased. This woman had planned things meticulously to leave no loose ends. In the following weeks, I became almost obsessed with trying to uncover Anna's true identity. I knew she probably used fake names and burner phones, but there had to be some way to find out who she really was and press charges. I hired a private investigator who looked into similar drugging cases in the area to see if he could establish a pattern or connection. I even staked out that bar a few more times, hoping Anne would turn up trying the same scam on some other unsuspecting guy. But she was a total ghost. My bank accounts were eventually drained by all the unauthorized charges to my stolen cards. My driver's license also had to be replaced, which was a hassle. But the worst part was just feeling so violated, knowing this devious woman was still out there somewhere plotting her next act. I became much more distrustful of people I met on dating apps after that. I used to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but now I was wary of each new match. Were they genuinely interested in me or just sizing me up as a potential target? It made dating feel more dangerous and cynical. I suppose I was flattered at first. It's not every day a guy you meet on Tinder starts treating you like royalty. Fancy restaurants, expensive gifts, non-stop compliments. Joseph seemed like a true gentleman, eager to impress me with over-the-top dates most women only dream of. Had I known it was all a facade calculated to make me lower my guard, I never would have swiped right in the first place. After matching, he immediately began courting me with elaborate outings to five-star restaurants I could never afford on my own. He knew all the exclusive hotspots and had bottles of champagne brought to the table without even glancing at the bill. It was thrilling to be the center of attention, all eyes on me as I entered on Joseph's arm. He reveled in playing the role of my lavish suitor. At the end of each extravagant evening, he would walk me home and present me with yet another exquisite bouquet of roses or orchids. No man had ever made me feel so special before. Even as the gifts became excessive, I told myself he was just an incurable romantic. So when Joseph asked to extend our fifth upscale dinner date by coming inside my flat for a nightcap, I hesitated. Not because his behavior raised any red flags yet. I was simply worried he would judge my humble apartment after wining and dining me so spectacularly all week. But he pressed the issue, demanding to know why I still hadn't invited him in after he had spent so much on our dates. His indignant tone took me aback. Where was the graceful gentleman from all those flower-filled nights? I stood firm and said I just wasn't ready for that step, thinking the awkward moment would pass. Instead, his entire demeanor morphed into someone unrecognizable. Joseph loomed over me, insisting he had earned the right to come inside after investing so much in this courtship. I shrank back, but he ignored my growing discomfort. His charm had instantly transformed into a dark, threatening aura. Desperate to get away, I ducked into the building and tried slamming the door behind me. But Joseph forcefully wedged himself into the entrance before I could lock him out. I pleaded with him to leave, but he just cornered me against the wall, any hint of the polished suitor now gone. Terrified, I suddenly heard rapid footsteps approaching from down the hall. My neighbor Raj emerged, quickly sized up the alarming situation, and began shouting at Joseph to get away from me. Joseph seemed momentarily startled, but refused to back down, claiming I had led him on unfairly. But Raj continued his demands, moving steadily toward Joseph with his phone out. Finally, unnerved by the confrontation, Joseph fled for the exit. Raj called after him that he had taken photos and would be reporting the harassment. I nearly collapsed in relief. Raj had possibly saved me from an assault. In the aftermath, I was left questioning how I could have so profoundly misjudged this man. Sure, the posh dates and flowers had seemed a bit much at first, but I rationalized he was just exhibiting classic chivalrous courtship. Now I saw it was all part of an act to manipulate me into trusting him completely. I immediately cut off contact, but Joseph kept calling and messaging relentlessly. He careened from fond apologies to seething blame, outraged that I was denying him after he had invested so much. His true unhinged nature could no longer be concealed. Over the next weeks, I noticed strange acts of vandalism in my building, garbage strewn around, flowers ripped from beds. They seemed like petty attempts at intimidation. Other residents were oblivious, but I knew in my gut Joseph was behind it. I filed reports and gave police the photos Raj had taken of Joseph that night, but with no hard evidence tying him to the incidents, they said there was little they could do beyond documenting it. I realized I would need to be vigilant about keeping Joseph away myself. One evening, I spotted him lurking across the street, using a hoodie as a flimsy disguise. He scurried off as soon as I noticed him, but the next morning I found a dead bird left on my car, a chilling message. I varied my daily patterns and stayed alert, but the stalking continued. I knew I wouldn't feel safe until he was caught, so I set a trap, staking out a bench in front of my building as if waiting for someone. Eventually, Joseph emerged from the shadows and approached me. Just then, Rat appeared with the police ready to pounce. They arrested Joseph, who was found to have a knife and was wanted for other harassment cases too. I shuddered realizing my close call with this dangerous and volatile man. In the aftermath, I kept replaying everything in my mind. Why had I discounted the early warning signs, the overblown extravagance, the pressing to be invited inside, the wounded pride at rejection? But sociopaths like Joseph are masters of disguise, cultivating a flawless image until they gain their trust. By the time his ex slipped, he already felt entitled to me, hence the rage when I resisted his advances. The kite admirer had just been a ploy to catch me off guard. I'm wiser now in spotting the red flags sooner and trusting my instincts. Joseph nearly charmed and terrorized me into becoming a headline before I reclaimed power over my own safety. It's left me wary of lavish suitors eager to sweep me off my feet. I'm rebuilding my confidence, but it may be some time before I put myself out there on an app again. Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I won't let that happen. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.